Onto it. Ma'am, the U.S. is experiencing record inflation, the worst in 30 years, way beyond expectations. OPEC didn't increase oil production. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending in your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. But there is also a point that is important to make on the Build Back Better framework. One, it is designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. It was specifically designed to bring down the costs of childcare and increase accessibility and availability. Designed to bring down the cost of elder care and make it available to all those working families that need that support and need that help. And Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're paying for it. So when we can get Build Back Better passed, and we are optimistic that we will, the American people will see costs actually reduced around some of the most essential services that they need to take care of their basic responsibilities, including issues like child care and elder care and also preschool. And that's an important point to mention also. And in fact, I had some conversations here in France, including with the Minister of Education in France, about the, again, global impact of the pandemic on child care, but also on education, and in particular for our youngest children. Universal pre-K, when we're able to do that, 3 and 4 years old, getting education at no cost, what that is going to do in terms of not only supporting working families who otherwise can't afford to put their kids in a private situation and otherwise don't have it available, that's going to have a huge impact on lowering the cost for families. So that is a big part of our agenda, and I think it's important to also stress that it's not going to cost anything for the American taxpayer.
Secretary Austin, why don't we make our intelligence reports public?
We share as much as we can from our intel reports, but as you know, we have to be careful about protecting sources and methods,
right,
so that we don't lose capability.
And would you agree that giving our adversaries access to our intel reports is a poor decision?
Exactly. I think that's something that we absolutely work to avoid.
Okay, and so then why did senior Biden officials hold nearly half a dozen meetings with top Chinese officials to give them information on Russian troop movements?
I don't know I don't have insights on any occurrences like that. So
okay, it seems the Chinese called up their comrades in Russia and sent Moscow the intel that Biden staffers provided them. And it appears that U.S. officials knew Beijing gave the intel to Moscow. So I would imagine you do not support giving Russia our intelligence.
I am unfamiliar with the issue that you raised, but you are right. I do not support giving our adversaries.
All right, General Milley, Under what circumstances, if any, have you advised intelligence sharing with Beijing?
Zero. Never.
Thank you. Given what we know now about how that subsequently shared information, this intelligence went to Moscow, what would you advise for similar scenarios going forward?
I don't think you should give intelligence to your adversary, period.
Thank you. What senior leader is ultimately responsible for this decision of intel sharing? Is it you? Is it Secretary Austin? Is it Jake Sullivan? Is it the president? Who is it?
I'll let my opinion is, I'll give you a couple of answers to that. One is the Director of National Intelligence is responsible for all the intelligence agencies and the
National Intelligence.
DNI, Avril Haines. So that's
Okay.
the person who's technically responsible, but obviously the president is responsible for everything that the government does, the executive branch does. And then each of us are responsible within our areas of responsibility.
So, under what authorities would we share our intelligence with Beijing?
I would ask that you ask these questions of the DNI. However, my knowledge of the system is that the president and/or the director of national intelligence, or perhaps the director of the CIA or something like that, does have authorities. But I don't know what those are specifically, and it's not something I can answer with accuracy.
So it's not a practice you approve of, but we do know that it has happened, correct?
I don't know that it's happened. I'm not aware of what you're talking about, actually.
Okay. We've talked a good bit about Afghanistan today. So did Biden's precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which really fed perceptions of America in retreat, did that play a role in shaping Putin's decision to invade Ukraine?
From the intelligence I've read, it's not clear. I think it certainly is possible, but I also know that Putin had aims on Ukraine long before the end of the war in Afghanistan. In fact, in
I think
October,
we all know that.
Yeah,
And so
and-
he saw his opening, right?
well, the forces were building up. They began to build up their forces in September, October. So
Right.
I think in order to do that, they would have had to have the plans and approval long before September, October.
Right. They have a habit of moving forward at the end of the Olympics. They did it in
Yeah,
08,
sure.
they did it in 14. We were watching, and the White House chose not to move forward. I want to ask you, you have both failed, and this comes to each of you, to share with us the budget line items for diversity and inclusion initiatives, and much less any way that you would tie those initiatives to war fighting. But public reporting has given us some insight into what is being spent and how some of that money has been spent. And Secretary Austin, earlier this year, there was a report that said the Department of Defense is studying the issue of allowing gender non-binary people to serve in the military. Is that true?
I am supportive of allowing any person that's eligible and can meet the qualifications to serve their country.
And who is involved in the study? Are uniformed military personnel involved?
I can't speak to,
Okay.
at this point, who's involved in any of the studies that we have ongoing, just off the top of my head, but I'll certainly take the question for.
And what will the living arrangements be made for non-binary service members? Are you all going to come back to us and ask for an appropriation for housing?
Senator, any study that we do, it will certainly be transparent and make it available to you.
And what about gender fluid individuals? How will you handle a service member who identifies as male on some days and female on other days, or polygender
I won't.
individuals?
I don't care to speculate on what we're going to ask you for, or what we're going to how we're going to qualify people. Again, some of this is in litigation in various states, and I think it's best to take your question for the record.
Okay.
So, Director Wright, so what I'm asking you to tell me if it's accurate or not. So I'm not suggesting all this is accurate. But it appears that DOJ have become politicized with regard to pro-life things. So there's a recent rise in high-profile FBI investigations of pro-life Americans, which raises the current concern that the FBI is weaponizing federal law enforcement and has become a tool, a partisan tool, which I don't think when we've talked that's been your goal. So there appears to be investigations that arrest of the pro-life community, and it's just the opposite of what's happened. We've had numerous fire bombings, violent attacks, acts of vandalism against churches, pro-life organizations, and crisis pregnancy centers in the days following the leaks of the Dobbs opinion. So is this right? Is that happening, not happening?
Well, first let me say I firmly believe that the FBI is going about its work and doing the right thing in the right way. Now, I'm glad you raised this topic because it gives me an opportunity to speak to it. We have our view, my view, plainly expressed to all of our people, including in the context of abortion-related violence, is that I don't care what side of the issue you're on, you don't get to engage in violence. And we are equal opportunity when it comes to that. Now, we have quite a number of investigations as we speak into attacks or threats against pregnancy resource centers, faith-based organizations, and other pro-life organizations. And you might be interested to know that since the Dobbs Act decision, probably in the neighborhood of 70% of our abortion-related violence cases or threats cases are cases of violence or threats against pro-life. So where the victims are pro-life organizations. And we're going after that through our joint terrorism task forces, through our criminal authorities, FACE Act and things like that. We have about 20 field offices involved in this. And so we take it very seriously. And again, I don't care whether you're motivated by pro-life views or pro-choice views, you don't get to use violence to express it.
So we've talked about this before. It just seems to me that in DOJ, FBI in particular, they might be doing the right thing, but you guys allow information to go out that not talking about what you're doing. Because if you read the press, you would think that you guys are only going after pro-life groups and not going after groups that attack pro-life. So I've never understood this about the FBI and DOJ, in that you guys are more proactive about what you're actually doing. Because I'm pro law enforcement, as you know, but I can't defend you with no information.
Senator, I think we don't have the time for me to tell you how frustrated I sometimes get by some of the news reporting about our work and the misreporting about our work. The circumspection that we display with regard to discussing our investigations is based on rules and practices that are important to people having confidence in the integrity of our work and go back decades in multiple administrations. And sometimes it can be very frustrating to agents on the ground when they see things being misreported about their work. But we have all been taught that we have to bite our lips and let the facts come out in the right way through court proceedings. And sometimes that can be very frustrating to us, and it sounds like to you too.
It makes it hard for me.